YouTube, Evernight is finally here, and if you guys love HP scaling gameplay, Castorice oriented teams, this unit is the newest installment of HP stack for big damage. But she's not just another damage dealer. She combines the powers of common Harmony supports, like Sunday or Tribby, gives her little twist on them, and also deals a massive amount of damage. At just easier S1, she's very easy to play, is very tanky, has a bunch of quality of life to assist with SP management, and also buffs your team. My name is Xlice, and in this video we'll be covering everything you need to know about Evernight, her kit builds Eidolons team comps, and showcasing her power at E0 as both a sub DPS for Castorice and also as a main DPS herself. These are going to be using premium signature light cones, so for budget friendly players, lower your expectations a bit on damage, and if there's anything crazy, I'll be sure to mention the QOL. Since this is going to be done on the CE server, of course, that means that things are subject to change for release, so keep that in mind. First, a full guide on how Evernight works. Our usual bright and bubbly March is now Goth and Evil Darch. She's Ice type on Remembrance, so expect a big mixture of path capabilities, a common thing among Remembrance characters. Preview of her stats, she's 7.5k HP, decent crit stats, and on the slower side depending on substats. The only thing you can really tell is that she's an HP scaler, and that's it. Here's a core breakdown of her goods. So, she has a memo sprite called Eevee. Sounds like the Pokemon. Eevee is summoned by either her skill or her ultimate. Very similar to Castorice, Eevee will constantly explode itself to deal damage and then respawn via Evernight's abilities. The tooltip for Evernight shows a number out of 16. When this number, called Memoria, reaches at least 16, and it's Eevee's turn, Eevee will consume all points and deal damage to all enemies scaling off max HP. The more points, the more damage multiplier gets scaled. So, to gain these points, we have the following ways. Combat start with technique will give +1. Generically losing HP for both Evernight and Eevee will gain +2. Eevee taking a normal action is +1, and then using Evernight's skill will either get 2 or 12. Using Evernight's ultimate will allow Evernight's skill to generate an extra 12 points, otherwise she'll just generate 2 with her skill. Each ultimate grants 2 charges of this, which is called Darkest Riddle, and the charges go down only when Eevee goes boom. So, Evernight basically has 2 booms of Eevee damage before Darkest Riddle expires, which happens only when Memoria is above 16 on Eevee's turn. Alright, now what to expect for her gameplay? Pretty simple. She's looping her Eevee summon over and over for lots of damage, just like Castorice. This involves her using her skill basically every turn, so on paper, she seems quite SP hungry, yeah? Well, yes, but no. She's got a massive QOL in her A2 trace, recovering 1 skill point every time Eevee goes boom. With this, I haven't actually really encountered any SP problems long term, since she's looping Eevee so often during fights. Alright, so now for a list of stats and buffs that she gets and provides the team. Ultimate. While in Darkest Riddle state, which lasts for 2 turns, applies 30% vulnerability on all enemies, and also grants 60% damage bonus to both Evernight and Eevee, and full CC immunity for both of them. Skill. All memo sprites, which includes Eevee and your team memo sprites, but not Evernight herself, gain crit damage equal to 24% of Evernight's crit damage for 2 turns. So basically, 200% Evernight crit damage would be 48% crit damage for all memo sprites. Talent. Every time Evernight or Eevee loses HP, they both gain a 60% crit damage for 2 turns. Eevee's talent. Eevee has CC immunity and higher aggro. Also provides 50% damage bonus to both Evernight and Eevee. After a boom, Evernight's speed will increase by 10 to 50% depending on Memoria stacks. 1 stack is 1% more speed, capped at 40 stacks on top of the base 10%. A2 trace, 35% crit rate for both of them, and extra HP consumption for 15% crit damage for 2 turns. A4 trace, 70 energy on battle entry, 5 energy and 1 Memoria point every time Evernight or an ally memo sprite uses an ability. Now, do note that she has a 240 energy ultimate, so this quality of life on top of her skill spamming will provide ample energy for decent ultimate uptime despite how much it costs. And finally, A6 trace. 1, 2, 3, or 4 Remembrance characters in the same team gives 5, 15, 50, 65 crit damage. The big spike is at 3 Remembrance characters for 50%, so this is the target to go for. 4 characters is nice, but not necessary, especially if you have premium supports worth more than 15% crit damage besides their kits. Alright, so a big TLDR for the buffs. Evernight provides 30% vulnerability, which is like equal to a trivial, 110% damage bonus to herself and Eevee, 35% crit rate to herself and Eevee, 75% crit damage just to herself, 75 plus 24% of Evernight's crit damage to Eevee, 24% of Evernight's crit damage to all ally memo sprites, 5 to 65% crit damage to all ally memo sprites as well. 1 SP almost every turn, big energy quality of life, and 10 to 50% speed bonus for 1 turn. Holy moly, I don't even know if that's considered a TLDR. It's a lot of buffs on various parts of her kit. All right, and then technique and basic attack just kind of do their own thing. Technique provides the effects of a skill on battle entry, but unfortunately it's not the same as a free skill usage. You won't be getting the free energy that comes from using a free skill like what Synergies has, but you will get the benefits of that skill. And then for the basic attack, it just exists. You should never need to use it with her A2 SP generation, so it should always be a skill spam. Extra trace nodes provide 3 nodes of HP percent, 2 crit damage nodes, and 5 crit rate nodes. Quite a bit of crit rate to assist your build. Reaching 100% with these, her trace passive and relics should be pretty straightforward. Total stack gain is 18% HP, 18.7% crit rate, and 13.3 crit damage. So overall, her kit is spam E every turn, ultimate when available, but typically used after EV booms for a free resummon, and to refresh Darkest Riddle counter. As you get to play with her, you may begin to notice the nuance in her gameplay complexity. Sometimes, EV will explode too often, leading to low Memoria stack explosions and less damage. Sometimes EV won't be on field for extended periods of time because your last skill usage pushed it above 16 and you don't have ultimate ready. Sometimes Evernight's speed will vary so widely depending on how often her speed buff is active from those booms. A lot of these are a bit difficult to control, so it's not your fault if she's not performing how you want her to perform. You'll have to play around her gimmicks and find ways to time your ultimates so that you reduce the chance something happens that you don't want. For leveling prio, her important scalings are everything except for basic attack. Evernight's ultimate does have the vulnerability percent, which will be the most important to level. Eevee's talent has damage bonus, Eevee's skill is her highest source of damage, Evernight's talent has self crit damage, and the skill has team memo crit damage. Basically, just ignore the basic attack. Alright, now onto her Eidolons. So, E1 looks to be a final damage boost for ally memo sprites, increasing the less enemies are on field. This is aiming to improve the single target weakness of these comps, providing up to 1.5x final damage bonus when there's only one enemy target on field. E2, 40% crit damage bonus and a huge boost to her Memoria gains. All of her minimum amounts increased by 2. This includes her technique and all associated passives. Darkest Riddle charges increases from 2 to 4 as well, making her skills basically perma uptime on plus 12 charges. This is an incredibly powerful Eidolon for her, nearly doubling the value of all natural Memoria that she gains. Her minimum amounts go from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4, and each of her ultimates go from 24 to 48 total Memoria over 2 to 4 charges. This, on top of the raw 40% crit damage bonus, means you can expect Evernight to consistently stack Memoria a lot higher before each explosion and never run out of Darkest Riddle state. On paper, it looks like a near double damage increase, but due to her ultimate charges being backloaded, expected to be about 75% DPS increase over E1. E3 and E5 are standard trace level increases. E4, 25% additional weakness break efficiency for all memo sprites and Eevee herself. Personally, not exactly sure why this is an Eidolon, but you guys can basically pretend like it doesn't exist because it really doesn't do that much. E6, while Evernight is on field, all team members including memo sprites gain 20% res pen. Eevee now also gains a 30% refund on Memoria consumed each explosion, which now is stacking damage the longer the fight goes on. You won't immediately notice the gains right away, but that 30% refund will continue to compound over time, leading to consistent high Memoria stack explosions. So overall, the Eidolons seem a bit weirdly balanced in strength. E2 and E6 are clearly very strong, way stronger than normal Eidolons from other characters, while things like E4 is very much a complete question mark. Really doesn't have anything to do with the total kit of the character. I'd say that for those interested in vertical investment, I really would just stop at E2. Now onto light cones. As a remembrance character that's HP scaling, we're basically overlapping with similar light cones that Castorice would use. Signature LC has raw balanced stats, max HP percent 30%, all memo sprites ignore defense, 30% additional damage bonus, and 8 energy refund. Quite an impactful LC for memo sprite teams in general, since this is a team buffing ignore defense light cone. The energy is also quite useful long term and is very noticeable considering how often Eevee goes boom. For the most part, her Sig LC is primarily for the ignore defense and energy QOL. She has quite a bit of other possible LCs to use, so the def ignore from the signature is what sets it apart. Other LCs that currently look good for her. Memory's Curtain is fine, more of a team buffing LC without many offensive stats for her. Hyacinth's LC is also a decent stat stick, but this is assuming you have an extra one because Hyacinth herself will be using it. Same deal goes for Castorice's LC. These LCs are mostly personal stat sticks that benefit her because she's HP scaling. For the most part, they should be used on their respective characters, so unless you pull for Evernight's signature, you're probably going to opt for a 4-star LC. So we have things like BP, Flower Remembers is pretty solid, providing unconditional crit damage for both Evernight and Eevee. We have Sweat Now Cry Less is our final option, providing crit rate and crit damage bonus for her. Due to crit rate being very likely capped at 100% without LC assistance, this one generally is just worse than the BP stat-wise. It's useful as a stepping stone. For Relics, Relics, we're going best in slot with a new 4-piece deliverer set, a good middle ground being stat bonus and buffing. 24% max HP for the wearer, but also 15% damage bonus to all allies. Combined with a 2-piece of 8% crit rate, this set is ideal for Evernight's mixed role. However, it is highly specific, so you can always opt for 2-piece combos like Longevous Disciple and Glacial Forest that provide HP percent or ice damage bonus. But I would plan to upgrade to 4-piece as soon as possible since the total stat gain is substantial. For planners, we have 2-piece Bones, which looks like a classic all-rounder with 12% HP and 28% crit damage. We also have 2-piece Arcadia as an option, but it will need all 4 teammates to have Memo Sprites to be stat equivalent to Bones. This caps at 36% damage bonus, providing 4% less overall stat than Bones, so if you want something unconditional, Bones will be the most comfortable. Main stats are moderately flexible depending on your substat quality. For the most part though, Evernight has a lot of innate self buffs. Bringing up the TLDR from Traces again, she's very heavy on damage bonus and crit for herself, so she's leaning towards HP investment on Relics. Currently, her build path looks like follows: crit damage or HP body, HP or speed boots, HP or damage orb, and HP rope. Body Piece prefers crit damage for her own crit damage transfer, but HP Body also works. Speed Boots or HP Boots is generally preference, since her passive technically allows automatic 134 breakpoint without any investment whatsoever. Speed Boots can theoretically be no value if you don't need to go past 134 speed, while HP Boots are heavily diminished due to many other sources of HP percent. Can't go wrong with either choice, just choose whatever you invested in or whatever you need. For Orb, HP is better overall due to her natural high damage bonus, and then Rope sticks with HP. She'll gain all of her energy passively from trace bonuses and skill spamming. For the most part, her build is primarily just a crit damage body and triple HP main stat. So with Creator Server Relics, mine's looking pretty solid. I've opted for crit damage, speed, HP with signature Light Cone. She's a bit faster with 133 speed, and with Eevee's talent giving us 40 to 50% speed when it goes boom, she's effectively near 160 to 170s. 7.5k HP, 70% crit rate, and 216 crit damage. Ideally, your crit rate is no higher than 65%. But even with crit damage main stat, overcapping will be more common than you think. Trace stats give 18% and her passive gives 35%, so her base crit is already like 60%. Team synergies. So at this point, characters that scale similarly and build similarly tend to operate on the same team. So Evernight really only has a true synergy, and that is HP scaling and Memo Sprite synergy. Of our roster, we technically only have 2 options here, Castorice and Xlice. Now Xlice scaling is based on speed and attack, and making sure you never exit her ultimate state or else all her stacking bonuses reset. This functionally has nothing to do with Evernight. So we really only have one choice, and that is being the best partner for Castorice. She does do a massive amount of damage herself though, so she can totally operate as a main DPS. These 2 team archetypes are basically all that we have for her, and unless we get future HP scaling characters or future Memo Sprite characters in general, that's gonna be it. Ideally both if possible. So Castorice team, add Hyacinth. Main DPS team, also add Hyacinth. For extra flex slots, we have RMC is great, has Memo Sprite, has Action Advance, has 2 damage bonus, and is free. Pretty good stuff. We also have Tribby. Tribby is great by default, especially since she's also HP scaling, and has aura buffs that, while they do overlap, they are still strong. So this is going to be core for the Castorice team. Casto, Evernight, Tribby, and Hyacinth. If you're running main DPS Evernight, you basically replace Castorice and include Hyacinth and RMC plus 1 flex slot. These are the 3 core Memo Sprite users and scale very well together. Last slot can be Tribby or any standalone support like Ruanmei or Silverwolf. Now, the main DPS team with Evernight is going to struggle against single target damage since Evernight is almost entirely AoE. So units like Cypher synergize quite well to offset these weaknesses. Overall, stick within these archetypes and really try to add Hyacinth. If you don't have or can't take away Hyacinth from other teams, you can manage with E6 Gallagher. Alright, so I've got 3 showcases for you guys today, 2 as a sub DPS with Castorice and 1 as a main DPS with roughly the same comp. Each of these teams is aiming for at least 3 Memo Sprite users to take advantage of her A6 Trace passive. First up is going to be the premium teams with Castorice, Tribby, and Hyacinth. Then I'll be switching out Tribby and Hyacinth for more budget-friendly options. And finally, we'll have a showcase of main DPS Evernight buffed by mostly similar supports. So this is the first premium team that I have showcased for you guys. Castorice, Evernight, Tribby, and Hyacinth, all E0S1. We have 3 passive abilities and 1 active ability, so we're entering with Castorice. And then we're going to be exploding Pollux basically immediately. Now, a couple of nuances while we start up this run. This was almost a 0 cycle. I tried this for several hours, and I was just so close every single time. So I just decided to take this run. It was probably the closest run. And in this particular situation, we basically don't ever have skill point issues. Like, I noticed that during my entire runs, I was like, wait, I literally don't even need to think about using basic attack on characters that don't want to basic attack. Tribby obviously is the only character that's basic attacking because she doesn't need to refresh her skill that often. The other three characters, Casto, Evernight, and Hyacinth, they're literally skilling every single turn without issue. And this is because Eevee's boom gives us +1 skill point every single time, and her boom goes so often. So it's pretty nice. And in terms of other nuances, basically Evernight's ultimate you want to use after a boom. You want to save it in some cases. You never want to use Evernight's ult while Eevee is still alive because you basically don't get the resummon. So that's just a small caveat. And as you guys can see, we zero cycled the first wave very, very quickly. This Flame Reaver guy is a bit difficult to zero cycle with this comp because our single target damage is a little bit lacking, but it's okay. So you guys will see I kind of min-max things a little bit here. I always want to wait. Also here, right here, 52 stack is going to be insane damage because the more Memorial stacks she has, the higher the multiplier of her boom. So you guys are going to see a pretty large kaboom here. 1.77 million. Yep. So that's basically Evernight. This is also why I included a main DPS rotation because she does so much damage just there. After we explode all of the clones, we then send a single target Castorice so she gets all the bounce stacks. And our Flame Reaver is now at 30%. Now we're waiting for the clones to summon again. I'm going to be holding both Tribby ult and Hyacinth ult just to get that AoE off. Otherwise, that chip damage is kind of wasted. So you guys will also notice that I am going to be saving Castorice's ult here because the HP bar is too low and I do not want to waste it. So we're going to push Evernight to try to clear this and push it to second phase before I send a Casto. Every single time I were to do Castorice's ult now, I would always end the second phase at about 30% HP, so it always ended up as a complete failure. This had the highest success of possibly zero cycling. As you guys saw there, we did an explosion. Also, we're sending a Castorice's ult right as the phase change. We're holding Evernight's ult, and the reason why we're holding it because I want to summon the clones first and do chip damage to those clones. So 84% here. Clones are summoned. Now we can go ahead and use Evernight's ult and resummon Eevee. 744,000 is pretty strong. And then we go Casto. 75, 83%. We're going to be basically be guaranteed here. We get 16 Memorial stacks, so we're going to summon an explosion here. And the ads are basically almost dead. We just send in Hyacinth E so that Ika goes. Destroy the ad, and this is our final chance. 42% left on the boss's HP. And I mean, this is all I have, right? 96.5% crit, 441 crit damage, 125% damage bonus. This is as close as we're going to get. Final boom. 900k, 17% left on the boss. That is all she wrote. So, to finish off the run, we're going to resummon Eevee, immediately have Memorial stacks, and immediately explode. 4% HP left. And we're just going to clean up here. So next up, we have our relatively budget comp. We're replacing Tribby and Hyacinth for Trailblazer, RMC, and E6 Gallagher. This is basically as budget friendly as we're going to get because we still need to run Castorice and Evernight. Obviously, in the next run, we're going to have main DPS, which you can do that as well. But we do want to have at minimum 3 memo sprites. So because Hyacinth used to be our memo sprite user, we're replacing Hyacinth or Gallagher. I'm switching out Tribby for RMC so that we have another memo sprite. So this run is a little bit tricky because Gallagher's sustain is definitely much lower than Hyacinth's. But as you guys will soon see, we should basically have no problem. And I was still surprised here because this comp is essentially all skill spammers. And so my skill points do get a bit low, but I realized that for the most part, Gallagher's ultimate plus the enhanced basic attack gives us that a little bit extra skill point management that essentially allows us to fully skill spam almost every single time. So you guys will notice that even with RMC, I am still skill spamming because I do have those extra skill points. Gallagher ideally wants to skill spam all the time, except for his post-ult basic attack, because I want that HP generation for that new bud on Castorice. So this is basically standard opener. Everything from the premium comp stays the same in terms of rotation. Evernight is ideally ulting after EV goes boom. And in terms of this type of damage, it's actually pretty solid. Alright, so we're going to be able to get a 0 cycle on wave 1 pretty straightforward here. I just need one more ultimate. 92%, 100%. I'm gonna send it here just to push us into wave 2. I already know that in wave 2 I'm not gonna be able to 0 cycle, so I might as well just force it here. Total damage output from one ultimate, 1.36 mils, pretty good. Alright, wave 2. So I noticed that it's pretty far away from Flame Reaver from summoning clones, so I just do a pretty standard rotation here. Always E with Evernight for those extra EV booms, which also gives us +1 skill point. Gallagher into ult into EBA, +1 skill point again. So skill point generation on this team is very, very nice. Action advance is a little bit awkward, but that is how it is. Castorice does not use any skill points, it's pretty solid. 92%. Okay, so now ads are being summoned. I can go ahead and ultimate here, which is perfect. I'm going to resummon EV first. Get those explosions off to reduce the HP just a little bit. The more true AoE that we do here, the better chance that Castorice's bounce hits main boss. So, alright, now we're sending it. Damage is pretty solid here. We're already reaching 1.2 mil total AoE. And then final move, 1.5. 3 skill points. Still able to E with Gallagher, get him closer and closer to his ultimate. Here, I still E even though I could have basicked here. I was like, okay, well, I only have 1 skill point after this, but do I really have an issue? Not really. Alright, so that's the first cycle. We're about 50% through the first wave. Mem boosts Casto, so we can just send an ult here. Again, the damage is pretty solid. So we're still getting decent AoE damage, and then the final boom does 1.65. It's pretty nice. Evernight does unfortunately does not get a full AoE boom here, so it's only 200k. +1 skill point. Another boom, +1 skill point again. That's what sometimes happens, by the way. So now I have to wait for either her skill again or an ultimate. So I'm going to go ahead and ult plus EVA here, because I really want to force this phasing here. Unfortunately, we're still a little bit low, which kind of sucks. Alright. This should push it to phase 2. Now he's going to summon ads, which is just in time for Castle's ult. And now we can blow through the clones again. Like I said, the damage is not bad. Damage is not bad. But our single target damage is heavily lacking here, which is expected. Mem coming in really clutch here, able to get us 2 back-to-back Castorice E's. Evernight continues the skill spam, continues to blow up Eevee, and then right here we save that ult so that we can resummon it right here. And this is the second cycle. So it is going to be just about a 3-cycle clear. Team looks a little bit unhealthy, which is a main thing with extended fights with Gallagher. He's just not able to heal that much, but we're still doing okay here. So I still use the skill. I'm at 1 skill point, which is a little bit iffy. But E into EV boom is +1 skill point, so it's totally fine. Alright, now we see how close we get. This is pure single target damage. 220k from the first hits into 700k, 27% left. Unfortunately, it does not look like we can squeeze in another cast ult before this cycle ends. Now that we have Gallagher's ultimate, we are topped up here in terms of HP. So Gallagher is still functionally pretty strong here, which is impressive considering that he's been meta for so long. All right, final little bit here. E into ultimate, into a mem push, into an E, into Castorice's ult, and I was like, okay, well this should be a 2-cycle clear considering it's 90% HP, But as you guys will see, we do a decent amount of damage, but yeah, he's left with 1%. And then then the blessing takes care. So it's technically a 2-cycle, but not quite. And final showcase I have for you guys today is the main DPS setup. Evernight, Tribby, RMC, and Hyacinth. Tribby is back on the schedule because in this particular comp, we do want 3 memos, and our 3 memos are Evernight herself, RMC, and Hyacinth. So in this particular comp, I really do not suggest Gallagher. You kind of need Hyacinth in order to ramp up pretty quick. So yeah, let's take it for a spin. Evernight is fairly impressive considering how much damage she does while also buffing the entire team. So yeah, here is a taste of main DPS Evernight. So in this, we have our damage amp from Tribby, we have our action advance from RMC, and we have a bunch of sustain, plus Memoria generation, plus all the extra attacks from Hyacinth. So it's really, really nice. So nothing we can do about Evernight getting above 16 Memoria, by the way. Once that happens and Eevee goes, it is always a boom. You cannot control it. So this, I kind of just like sent all the ultimates. There really wasn't a care in the world, but ideally I should have done Tribby ult before Evernight ult. It's fine. At the end of the day, like if it does affect the cycle clear, we're just trying to have fun here because like Evernight's just cool. So yeah, let's pay attention to Evernight's damage overall. Once all auras are active, which they are now, if she gets a decent amount of Memoria stacks, we'll see how much damage she does. So this is just 23, which is on the lower side. 660k damage is still good, though. Okay, beautiful. Hyacinth's doing Hyacinth things, always doing a decent amount of damage. 24 Memoria stacks, as I said, because Eevee goes so often, we're getting so many skill points. You basically never have to worry about skill point management, which, in my opinion, is pretty nice. I kind of like that. Okay, so we 0-cycled wave 1 very, very quickly, which is expected here. Unfortunately, I would have liked this to be waiting for the clones to summon, but again, you cannot control it. 600% crit damage total. Eevee's pretty damn strong here, but it is minimum Memoria stack, so only does 108,000 damage. I want to resummon Eevee here and get Darkest Riddle up, so we ult here. And now we're just waiting. Mem is almost about to go, 100% here. 29 Memoria stacks, single target damage, 32. 400k is pretty good. Considering that would have been true AoE if there were more mobs, it is quite strong. All right, let's go set up. Boom. Hyacinth. 750k Hyacinth. That's just Hyacinth things. And yeah, it's just so much damage, it's kind of ridiculous. Anyways, that additional damage is just crazy. Evernight has 29 stacks now. Single target damage again. It's forced. We have a little bit less crit damage at 522 this time. Damage, 500k, still very, very good. 58%. Ultimate here will send us, but I'm waiting. Okay, now all the ants are summoned. We're going to send in Tribby ult and then RMC ult. This should push us to 100% on Mem, which should action advance Evernight. Action advancing Evernight here. Oh, I do not have Darkest Riddle, so we are a little bit off here, but that's okay. 20 stack Memoria, 800k AoE, sending to second phase. Waiting for him to summon the ads here. Okay, now we're sending Hyacinth into Evernight's ult. Alright, Evernight ult, true AoE damage. Hyacinth doing 640k. Evernight's ultimate dealing 1.4 million. I mean, it's more impressive than you really think it is. And considering that the boss's HP bar is 52% wave 2, right before ending the cycle, I mean, that's kind of nice. So Evernight is able to squeeze in one more big Eevee boom here. 600% crit damage right before the cycle ends. Damage, 400k. So after the memory tournaments are 30%, which is kind of impressive, right? You saw how close it was compared to the premium Casto team. Evernight does a really solid amount of damage herself. So if you want to go ahead and play her main DPS, I think it's totally fine. I do think that you are going to need Hyacinth. Like Hyacinth, I think is a must for this. All right, just wrapping things up here. Pretty good clear. I think we're actually going to be a little bit shy because Evernight is losing a little bit of momentum here. It is 10% HP, but we are just about to end second cycle. It would suck, but it is what it is. 6% HP. Maybe Hyacinth can clean up here. I am not sure though. Let's see. Hyacinth ulti. Tribute damage 5%. Ika. Ah! Just don't talk to me, man. All right, these 1%. Bro, both my budget run and this run went 1%. Okay, you know what? It's basically a 1 cycle and a 2 cycle, not a 2 and 3 cycle. Don't worry about it. Just look at bold, okay? All right, so closing thoughts, what do I think of Evernight? Feels amazing to play in my opinion. Constant SP generation from EV boobs, low-key feels like cheating, and SP management is a breeze. Damage output is also impressive, and scales with how many Memoria stacks you have, so I can definitely see vertical investment if you want to main her. She's also like pseudo-harmony, with vulnerability percent on ultimate, and crit damage buff to all allies, so for Remembrance enjoyers and HP scaling enjoyers, she's really nice. If you like the Castorice type playstyle, I think Evernight is a no-brainer to pick up. Otherwise, I'd say it depends on if you have Hyacinth available. She's a pretty big enabler for the overall rotations of the comp, as well as dishing out illegal amounts of damage herself, along with Ika as a sustain. It'll also make survivability basically a non-issue, especially with all the HP sack. Overall, Evernight is a solid Remembrance unit and a very valuable pickup for HP scalers. That's going to wrap it up for Evernight's complete guide. If this video helped you out, don't forget to like and subscribe for more easy to digest guides and showcases. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next video. Take care.